Hello and welcome once again to my continuing series on the facts of life. I hope you found it to be enjoyable so far, giving you some food for thought anyhow, and maybe a chuckle or two. At any rate, today I want to continue this talk in mentioning the founding of the nation and the thoughts of the people who designed our form of governance, one conceived in liberty and dedicated to truly the pursuit of happiness for everyone. At any rate, my second favorite founder, next to Washington, was John Adams. Although he was sometimes intemperate and irascible, he was a brilliant man of high moral character and impeccable integrity. His contributions to the country are almost beyond measure. He used his genius brilliantly in helping his co-founders to fashion our American government and the Constitution that governs our society. George Wythe, a patriot friend of Adams, once asked him for his thoughts about an ideal form of government. He replied to George in a letter dated April 1776. The following is an excerpted portion of that letter. This is what he had to say to his friend George. My dear sir, if I was equal to the task of forming a plan for the government, I should be flattered at your request and very happy to comply with it, because as the divine science of politics is the science of social happiness, and the blessings of society depend entirely on the constitutions of government, which are generally institutions which last for generations. Well, there can be no greater employment, more agreeable to me or to a benevolent mind, than research after the best form of governance. Nothing is more certain from the history of nations and the nature of man that some forms of government are better fitted for being well administered than others. We ought to consider what is the end of government before we determine which is the best form. Upon this point, all speculative politicians agree that the happiness of society is the end of government. As all the divines and moral philosophers will agree that the happiness of the individual is the end of man. From this principle, it will follow that the form of government which communicates happiness to the greatest number of persons and in the greatest degree is the best. All sober inquiries after truth, ancient and modern, pagan and Christian, have declared that the happiness of man, as well as his dignity, consists in virtue. Confucius, Zoroaster, Socrates, not to mention authorities really sacred, have all agreed to this. If there is a form of government, then, whose principles and foundation is virtue, will not every sober man acknowledge it better calculated to promote the general happiness than any other form? Fear is the foundation of most governments, but fear is so sordid and brutal a passion, and renders men in whose breast it predominates so stupid and miserable that Americans will not likely be approving of any political institution which is founded on it. Honor is truly sacred, but holds a lower rank in the scale of moral excellence than virtue. Indeed, the former is but a part of the latter, and consequently has not equal pretensions to support a frame of government productive to human happiness. The foundation of every government is some degree or passion in the minds of the people. The noblest principles and most generous affections in our nature, then, have the fairest chance to support the noblest and most generous models of government. They will convince any candid mind that there is no good government but what is republican. The very definition of republics is an empire of laws, not of men. That, as a republic, is the best of governments, so that particular arrangements of the powers of society, or in other words, that of government, which is best contrived to secure the impartial and exact execution of laws, is the best of republics. As good government is an empire of laws, how shall your laws be made? In a large society inhabiting an extensive country, it is impossible that the whole should assemble to make laws. The first necessary step, then, is to depute power from the many to a few of the most wise and good. The principal difficulty lies, and the greatest care should be employed in constituting this representative assembly. It should be miniature in an exact portrait of the people at large. It should think, reason, and feel like them. Equal interest among the people should have equal interest in it. Great care should be taken to effect this. Regulations to prevent unfair, partial, and corrupt elections will spring up naturally when all the powers of government come to be in the hands of the people's friends. The dignity and stability of government in all of its branches, the morals of the people, and every blessing of society depends so much upon an upright and skillful administration of justice. The juridical power ought to be distinct from both the legislative and executive and independent of both, as both should be checks upon that. The judges, therefore, should always be men of learning and experience in the law, of exemplary morals, great patience, calmness, coolness, and attention. Laws for the liberal education of youth, especially of the lower classes of people, are so extremely wise and useful that to a humane and generous mind, no expense for this purpose would be thought extravagant. The very mention of sumptuary laws will excite a smile. Whether our countrymen have wisdom and virtue enough to submit to them, I know not, but the happiness of people might be greatly promoted by them, and a revenue saved sufficient to carry on this war forever. Frugality is a great revenue, besides curing us of vanities, levities, and fopperies, which are real antidotes to all great, manly, and warlike virtues. A constitution founded on these principles introduces knowledge among the people and inspires them with conscious dignity, becoming free men. A general emulation takes place, which causes good humor, sociability, good manners, and good morals to be general. That elevation of sentiment, inspired by such a government, makes the common people brave and enterprising. That ambition which is inspired by it sober, industrious, and frugal. You will find among them some elegance, perhaps, but more solidity, a little pleasure, but a great deal of business, some politeness, but more civility. You and I, dear friend, have been sent into life at a time when the greatest lawgivers of antiquity would have wished to live. How few of the human race have ever enjoyed an opportunity of making an election of government? When, before the present epoch, had free millions of people full power and fair opportunity to form and establish the wisest and happiest government that human wisdom can contrive. I hope you will avail yourself and your country of that extensive learning and indefatigable industry which you possess to assist her in the formations of the happiest governments and the greatest character of a great people. Well, that is some of the best of Adams as far as I'm concerned. In his letter to his patriot friend George, he laid out for us the form of government that made America great, and just exactly what we need to do to get America back on the track to prosperity and greatness and more general happiness amongst us all. Well, quite a lot for today, but I do love Adams, and his contributions to the country were just enormous. Not to downplay all of the others from Washington, Madison, Jefferson, Monroe, Henry, Franklin, and on and on. Truly geniuses, brilliant men that constructed a wonderful form of government that led to American greatness and will certainly continue it forward if we follow those constitutional and precepts and the principles by which those men and women lived at that time. Anyhow, that's it for today, and I hope I can see you again tomorrow in my continuing series on the facts of life, the truths about human nature, the human condition, human governance, and the pathways to happiness and prosperity. May God bless you all. Hopefully, we'll see you again soon.